Hey, good morning, all. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. It's Tuesday, Politics Edition. You know, at the risk of being redundantly boring, we've switched things up today. We've decided we're going to start a little later on this Tuesday than we normally do. I'm in New York City. Dan is back.
Hey!
You thought Dan was gone. In a few moments, Dan might lift his coffee cup, and then some of you are going to say to yourself,
Is he?
should Dan a robot? Should he fill out one of those things on your phone where you have to prove you're not a robot? And Robb is just holding down the fort there in Arkansas, a state he doesn't know well but is learning to love. And it's the Common Good Podcast on this fine Tuesday, so we're super excited to be chatting with you. The weather here in New York, start of the U.S. Open Tennis Tournament, lovely. It's not why I'm in town. It's just a thing that happens to be going on today. Dan, how are things there in Michigan? And welcome back to the being on screen on the podcast.
Yeah, glad to be back on the live stream. I've been living in basically the 1800s out here in a cornfield in Michigan for the last several months, and just recently got internet. True story. Thanks, Michael Toy, for the hookup with the Starlink. But I'm back, and good to be here. Things in Michigan are good. We just started school and getting into the swing of that. So.
Dan, Robb, how about that elusive place that they call Southern Arkansas?
Well, I actually live in Northwest Arkansas, but after
Like he
a couple of
knows.
weeks, that's right. How would I know anything about the state where I live?
I sure don't know. I didn't even know there was South and North Arkansas. I just thought it was Arkansas. But
yeah, it's a little bit like South Detroit, not a thing. South Detroit, you're basically in like Lake Michigan, right?
I think. What do they say in South Dakota and South Carolina? Like, I live in Southern South Carolina, Southern North Dakota, Southern South Dakota.
I don't know. Anyways, we have had weather in the hundreds for a few weeks, and it has finally dipped into the high 80s, and it feels absolutely amazing and very lovely. So, yeah.
Well, thinking about our good friends down in Florida, many people are part of this podcast community. A lot of common do-gooders down there. Another big hurricane coming to Florida. I mean, it feels like, honestly, maybe it was a year ago when that Sanibel Island just got devastated from that big hurricane, and now another one is coming. And so thinking about those folks, and then just having to live there with Ron DeSantis as their governor, it's just a lot of trauma for people. So,
do you think he's polishing up his
our
white
thoughts
boots,
and prayers?
Getting his rescue boots ready?
Pulling out the old M&Ms. A lot going on in the world of politics since we last chatted. Dan and I made our way over to the Republican National Convention's hosting of the presidential debate, and did some interviews with some people and chatted with some folks going in to participate in the debate, and as you know, like Chris Christie, and also people there to watch and people outside. So we'll be glad to give you a little recap of that experience. And then, of course, Donald Trump did surrender, probably, humming Bruce Springsteen's "No Surrender" in his mind while he surrendered himself to the authority of the state of Georgia, which he also did, ironically enough, in the election when he lost that state, and great part because of that lost the election. So a lot of surrendering going on in Georgia. And of course, Yabbits is with us from Georgia here as well. So, Robb, Dan, lots going on in the world of politics.
Yeah. So tell us about. So you both were in Milwaukee for the presidential debate, the first Republican presidential debate that Donald Trump skipped, as someone who didn't watch much of the debate live, just kind of sampled a little bit here and there, and then I figured I would get any meaningful clips on YouTube or in Twitter. It seemed like there was a few good kind of one-liners. I kind of liked. I kind of like Chris Christie's, calling Vivek ChatGPT. That kind of made me laugh. Um, and taking a swipe at him for stealing a line from Barack Obama. Um, I it seemed like a bit of a nothing burger. Other than that, I saw some reporting today that showed that Nikki Haley probably got the biggest bump coming out of the debate, picking up something like 5 points in the polls. The problem is that took her from 2% to 7% in the polls.
Right.
So,
Right. It's
come
like
on.
having a summer job as a high school kid and having your boss tell you that they're going to give you a 25% pay increase. Still not much. Well, I'll tell you, Dan, I don't know how you've reflected on our time there, but being outside the debate while people were going in, doing interviews with people, running our own press conference about the importance of the common good and making sure Republicans want to support contraception, other things we were doing out there. It feels a bit like the difference between walking in nature and watching the nature channel, or being at a professional sporting game and watching it on TV. Really different experiences. You actually see less of what's going on. And partly because once the debate started, everybody left. We went into a local establishment and they were bouncing back and forth between other television programming and sometimes the debate. So heard little bits and pieces. But the people we met out there didn't care what was going on inside for the most part. Chris Christie did, as he went in and had a little exchange of words, which we'll maybe put on the podcast in coming weeks. But most people were there that we talked to because they were supporting Trump.
Yeah.
And they were just decked out in mostly Trump garb. And then a few people on some issues, around abortion, some other things. But for the most part, a bunch of gawkers and a bunch of Trump Trump supporters. And boy, those Trumpers are still hardwired in. Experienced it on Wednesday at the debate, yesterday in the great conversation in the special edition that we're doing of this podcast called Red Hat, Blue Hat Talk with Casey. It's just incredible how wired in folks are and do not care about the things we all care about, like Richard Nixon's question that the people of America will want to ask, which is your president a crook? And we all want to get to the answer to that before Election Day. These folks did not seem to care.
Yeah, that was what was shocking. We would ask people like, hey, Trump's been indicted. There's literally dozens of charges against him. If he's convicted, would that sway your opinion? Would you still vote for a convicted criminal? And they're all like, yeah, I would. It just has no impact on whether or not these folks are going to vote for him.
Yeah, and that's true not just outside of the venue, but inside as well. On the debate stage, when asked the question, would who would vote for Donald Trump if he was the nominee? Everybody raised their hand except Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson. Who have been the two most vocal critics of Trump. Chris Christie, in his kind of bold bullying kind of way, and Asa Hutchinson like a genteel grandfather. I don't know if either one's been effective yet, but it seems what was reflected on stage seems to be, the sentiment amongst Republicans that, the most of Republicans would be like, nah, but I can't vote for Joe Biden, so I'll vote for that guy.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it is true that the party affiliation, and maybe this is going to be true among Democrats at some point too, the level to which Republicans are party committed, irrespective of who the candidate is truly stunning to me. Now, I think some of the Trumpers, because when I said, and I asked, half a dozen people or so, if Donald Trump is not the candidate, and for many of them, they couldn't even get to that thought experiment. But if he's not on the ballot, will you vote for one of those people? A number of them said no.
Yeah.
I think Donald Trump has even said that, which is probably why they said it, right? It's one of the things that happens when you're inside political cults is you say the same thing as the leader. And so they were like, no, I'm not sure I would vote for them, even though these people said they would all vote for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's the one who's charged with crimes and was twice impeached and had a chance already at being president and was, somewhere between ineffective and criminal in his duties as a president. So really, really stunning.
Somewhere between, I feel like he, fully embraced both of those things. He wasn't somewhere between incompetent and criminal. He fully embraced them both.
Both
he's living the full life, living the whole life. So, but I did think the debate was curious on a couple of points. The debate moderators had in the first half an hour a question that Dan and I saw happen. And so for other people who didn't watch the debate, we can attest that this happened. It was a video question from a young Republican asking about the effects of climate change and what each one of the candidates was going to do, not only to address climate change, but to be sure that Republicans were not tagged with being anti-climate change or climate change deniers.
Yeah, it was really like, what are you going to do to work against the perception that Republicans are the party of climate denial? And then to a T, everyone came out and said, it's a hoax. It's, it was just unbelievable.
And so the moderator, if you saw this moment, you might remember it. The moderator said, with a show of hands, let's start there. How many of you believe that climate change is caused by human activity? And then Ron DeSantis interrupts the moderator and says, that's not how we should do this. We're not 12-year-old children. We shouldn't have to raise our hand. Let's have a debate about it. And then the moderator just let Ron DeSantis decide how that question was going to be moderated, which seems absolutely bonkers to me that the moderator would do that. Because then later they raised their hands multiple times.
Oh, yeah. Everyone was real quick to raise their hands in support of Donald Trump, like 12-year-old school children.
Yeah. So here they had a chance, staring at climate change, could have answered it. And Ron DeSantis let them all have a bailout. And then they had some argument about raising of hands. Just incredible. So I thought that was a very telling moment of the debate for the party itself, irrespective. I mean, if Donald Trump told the truth last Thursday when he surrendered to the authorities of Georgia, following his surrender, he said on a Newsmax television program, then they took a mugshot of me, and I've never heard it called a mugshot before. So if it's true that Donald Trump has never heard the phrase mugshot in his life, and even went on to say, they didn't teach us that at the Wharton School of Business. No, they taught you that in 4th grade, that a mugshot was taken. Most people don't wait for graduate school to learn the term mugshot. If it's true that he hadn't heard the term mugshot in his life, he may not have heard the term climate change either. He might not be a climate denier. He might just actually not know what it is. I mean, the level of willful disregard for things that we all know to be true is truly stunning in this entire crowd, this entire group. So I don't know. It was really, really something. Dan, any other memories out of our time standing out in the sweltering heat of a summer day in Milwaukee?
Yeah, it was literally 100 degrees and humid.
Literally.
So everyone out there is just sweaty and angry and just trying to have conversations about politics. I will say it was interesting to hear so many people, and almost all Trump supporters based on their regalia, be so close to diagnosing the problems correctly, and then at the last second, it's Joe Biden's fault. It's like, my paychecks are getting smaller and smaller. Our jobs are going overseas. The rich are getting richer, and it's Joe Biden's fault because of gas prices. And just like the last, the last little bit, it's like, oh, you're so
Right there.
close, and yet, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you the critical question about time in Milwaukee. Did you have a Juicy Lucy?
No.
Did not.
Is that a thing
Did
in
not have a
Milwaukee?
Juicy Lucy.
Yeah.
Didn't even meet her.
We had a spotted cow.
Wow.
Is
No,
a Juicy
Juicy Lucy, it's
the burger with the injected cheese?
with the cheese in the middle. Yeah,
Oh,
it is.
wow.
It's invented in Milwaukee. Yeah.
Good
I
on
didn't
'em.
know that. It's big.
Yeah.
It's big in my town of Minneapolis too. I didn't know it was a Milwaukee thing, but that's classic.
Yeah.
That Minnesotans would just take something from Wisconsin, not give them credit for it, and then just move on.
Yeah.
And there was no Schlemiel, Schlemazel, or Slots and Pepper Incorporated either. There was none of that classic Milwaukee stuff. But I will say the people we met were hardcore because we were out there for 6-7 hours in truly 101 degrees was the temperature, and so were they. Like we had a reason to be out there. We were recording people, tried to do a little press conference. These folks are just out yelling at the wind.
They chose
So they
to
were
be there.
hardcore, committed people standing out against it. But what I will say is you begin to see when you're at any of these kinds of events, all the party infrastructure and apparatus that exists, a lot of young people going to the debate, like not just out as commentators in the street, but with badges to get in and all. A lot of younger people dressed, Rob, you would have loved it, just dressed like classic Republicans. The blue suits, the red ties, the brown shoes. One guy was standing there, young guy, sweating so bad. And I said, it's a tough day to have to dress like a Republican, isn't it? He goes, oh, this is terrible. But they just looked the part, like straight out of central casting. So, and all the news outlets are there. So you're reminded of the back end that produces all of this stuff and how much there is and how much force and weight there is behind it. And I think that's just it's worth being reminded of for me that, being there and for the people just to know that that's what goes on. So presidential debates and party systems and apparatus don't just exist, willy-nilly. It is very crafted and calculated production that's going on with this thing. So, all right. Hey, let's talk about the indictments.
Yeah, we've talked about what happened at the debate and the people on stage and even outside saying that Trump's indictment and possible conviction doesn't sway him. What about outside that little bubble? What is Trump's indictment doing politically? Is it just feeding his martyr narrative and actually giving him a boost? This headline says his campaign raised $7 million on the Fulton County booking last week. So, like, he's making hay out of this to an extent. What's going on?
Look, okay, so just a couple of comments about the $7 million raised in the day. It's a lot. Mm-hmm. And it was raised by selling product, which I think there's a couple of ways to think about that. So selling T-shirts, mugs, I don't know what else there was, hand towels, whole variety of things. So just point of fact, they didn't take, it's not like $7 million in straight up donations. They're selling $30 cups and, so they've got some amount of processing fees and just all the apparatus that goes into that. Sometimes that stuff can start pushing 40, 50% for all the people that have their grubby little hands on it. But what it does say is that there's people who are willing to give up $7 million worth of, hard-earned, many of them probably pre-tax dollars, to give it over to Donald Trump's effort. So maybe it's not as much money as they're saying, but it still shows that there's a lot of people who want to surround themselves with the gangster narrative that is Donald Trump. And that, I think, is going to be telling. The people for whom they find this embarrassing, they don't want to tell their kids about it. They can't write all this off as simply being political theater put together by Joe Biden's secret cabal to keep his own son out of prison and put Donald Trump in prison sort of nonsense. But the group that's into that, they love the idea that they've got themselves a Tony Soprano and a real, a real Tupac kind of character, which is also shocking to me that the Republicans are taking on the criminal syndicate brand with Donald Trump. They want his mugshot. They want him looking fierce. They want him looking like he's staring down the lens of the justice system and saying no to it. Like that's the people that Republicans want to be. My own opinion is this is not going to sit well with, I don't know, 7, 10, 12% of Republicans, in addition to the ones who've already walked away from Trump. So I think all in all, it's going to be a real negative impact, but that's a bit of projection and not really based on any facts right now. But I just know a lot of Republicans who don't like this version of what the Republican Party is becoming.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Doug. We have to caveat all of this by saying that there is the percentage of Trump supporters that that are part of the cult, that he can do no wrong, and relish everything he does, and then there is a percentage of those that are just like, can't believe that this is happening, and that every time that there's an event, whether it was kids in cages, whether it was January 6th, whether it was the Access Hollywood tapes, the holding up the Bible in front of the church, all of these different instances, we come on this this and we say, this will be the thing, this will be the thing. And it hasn't been. None of them have been the thing. None of them have been the thing that has, broken off, all, just shattered the support. But each of them have splintered some amount of support. And
that's a great point.
And those, that is adding up. And you see percentages where Trump's at, I think in the latest poll that I saw, something like 56% in the Republican primary. 56% is a far cry from where he was. That means 44% of Republican voters, likely Republican voters, are looking elsewhere. And you say, well, 56% is a political landslide in any election. Absolutely it is. But Donald Trump is, he has lost significant support. And
because as it turns out, national elections are not only counting Republican voters, even though Donald Trump would have liked the last election to do that. So winning 56% of Republicans is not a landslide. Yeah. It's 56% of less than 50%.
I mean, I would much rather than, trying to analyze the, the political ramifications of the indictment and the mugshot and all of this, the arrest and everything, I would much rather talk about 6'3", 215.
Which is not his prisoner number. It's the height and weight that he had his representatives put on the form that accompanied his surrender into the custody of the. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you not know this, Dan?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. He self-reported. He basically self-reported that he's 6'3".
Yes.
215 pounds.
So he is an NFL linebacker or quarterback.
Basically a professional athlete. Yes. Yeah.
Well, he did win that golf tournament recently.
He did, apparently.
You think about and one of the best things that happened on Twitter was, the repeat was the production of all of the pictures of athletes who are 6'3", 215. And it was just amazing. It was none of them, shockingly, none of them looks like Donald Trump. And the response of Trump supporters on Twitter hilariously was, Yeah, but muscle weighs more than fat. So, but not that much more. Yeah, it's just amazing. Just amazing.
No,
Because there was
especially
a
when
lot of
there's so
conversation
much
about,
more fat than there is muscle. I mean, that's the
yeah.
other side of it. Just a lot more.
Oh,
Which,
oh
look,
my,
if
yeah,
he weighs 270, okay, that's fine.
yeah,
Just don't lie
yes,
about it.
yes.
And you know what
Don't
he's doing.
lie about it.
He's not just lying. This is what I've come to conclude about this.
Yeah.
He's not just lying. He's trolling. He
Mhm.
is literally saying, I
Yes,
don't even take this thing seriously enough to give you,
yes,
accurate representation. Baby blue
yeah.
eyes, and I don't know his hair color. He listed something
Strawberry blonde.
strawberry blonde. Like he's,
Yeah.
he's got some. Now maybe Donald Trump in his own mind really does see himself as a blue-eyed, strawberry blonde, 6'3", 215-pound.
Yeah.
Youthful.
I mean, that's what
character.
that's what he looks like. That's what he looks like in his NFTs.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
true.
that's the look from the NFTs.
Yeah.
Apparently, somebody in the comments said that Stormy Daniels tweeted out, "And I weigh 120 pounds, and I'm a virgin." So that's funny if Stormy Daniels actually did
Doug,
troll Trump.
Your trolling comment, I think, is right on the money, though, because I think Trump is a master marketer, and he knows what will go viral, what will get attention. I've become convinced now that he misspells words in his Truth Social posts on purpose to get them trending on Twitter. So when he spells stolen with two L's, or he spells rumor
with two O's,
ROOMER, I think he's doing that on purpose. I think it is all part of a strategy.
I don't think him too much credit.
I don't think it's he's dumb. I think it's he knows that if he does something like that, more people are going to see it. And I think that's true with
more people will talk about it.
The 6'3", 215 as well.
Well, it could be. Do you think he puts his finger right up to his corner of his mouth as he does his masterminding of all that? Look, Trump might be a master marketer, maybe. He's also just a throw it all at the wall guy. He puts out so much trashy stuff, whether it's ties or steaks or fake colleges, and lots of posts that no one pays any attention to. The reason people pay attention to Donald Trump currently is because the consequence of him, again, being in public office. And I'll also say, the thing Donald Trump claims, the thing a lot of Trump supporters that I talk to say often is it's not really about him. It's what he represents, and what he represents is us. And there's a lot of people whose critique of Donald Trump is also a critique of the people who follow Donald Trump, right? It's one of the realities. I hope it's not true of us. First of all, I hope we're not only mocking Donald Trump, personally or something. We're trying to engage in his public persona and, frankly, the professional wrestling-like persona that he puts forward. But there's a lot of people who think that those who support Trump are liars, stupid, and can't spell, like all those things. So it could be all of that if Trump is being shrewd, it might not just be for attention. It might be because he's tapping into something that he knows is going to get people saying things about Trump supporters and Trump himself, and then that's what's ultimately going to be the kickback. But I think your earlier comment is spot on. If we can be in the Mutual Admiration Society for comments today, I think you're spot on about nothing is going to be a singular moment. If you take weight loss as a metaphor for this, as long as we're on that topic, you don't tend to lose 30 pounds in a moment or in a day. If you lose 30 pounds in a day, you've probably had a surgery or had something removed, Yeah. You tend to lose weight a half a pound, a quarter of a pound at a time, a day.
Yes.
With
As
each one of these things, as Donald.
Yeah, as a person who's been actively trying to reduce my weight, and has been stuck at 204 for entirely too long, that that sense of like, okay, the first day you drink a bunch of water and a couple of pounds come off, and then it's
Yeah.
ounces after that.
Yeah. And then it's, literally you lose weight by, well, it's going to be a little specific for some people, by peeing, breathing, and pooping. If you ever wonder where and sweating, where the fat goes, it gets turned into energy and then gets turned into breath and to perspiration and to bodily, peeing functions. So that's where the actual fat goes. It takes a long time for a system to metabolize all that and for it to come out, piece by piece. That's why people like to weigh themselves in the morning. Did you know that? It's not just because you haven't put anything in your body yet. It's because overnight is primarily the time that you lose weight. All that is a metaphor for Donald Trump shedding the pounds of support. And I'm telling you, for sure, there might be some percentage of people who've said he's now our guy. I like the badass. I like the guy that's going to, but you're going to bring in some calories, but boy, you're going to be losing pounds of support. Just one incident at a time, a voter. And to our work, and I think ultimately to who the next president of the United States will be, it really matters to those people in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona.
Yep.
Nearly everywhere else, it doesn't matter because those states are already settled on their electoral college choice. But 5 states, and maybe you throw in Nevada, maybe you could pick up a couple more that some people might want to make an argument, often called swing states. Those are the places. And if you think there's people in those states that are going to be like, I think I'm going to look at the charged criminal who I didn't vote for in the past, or did once and didn't the next time, but I'm going to sort of return. My bet is there's not enough people. All that to say, if the work is done, if the work is not done, conversations don't happen, campaigns aren't mobilized, it could be a different story. If the Biden re-election team becomes the Hillary Clinton team of 2016 and doesn't do the work in the places where the work has to be done, bad things could happen. So it's not guaranteed, but I think if the work is done, then the situation is right that the shedding of pounds are going to happen here.
Yeah, as they say in politics, there is a path for Trump to be elected president again, but there are more paths for Joe Biden to be reelected.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to briefly talk about, on the screen we have this courtroom sketch of Trump and some of his crew. And has technology not improved, or like skill level? Who are they hiring to do these courtroom sketches? It looks like a second grader sketched this.
Can we talk about the guy in back and just like who squeezed him? Why is he so
the proportions are wrong, like
cylindric.
For those on the podcast only version of this, you're just going to have to imagine something that's between a 1950s police cartoon and, Dan, like you say, a 4th grader's drawing of this. That certain details are so specific. The fella in the back, the beard is really well shaded. I mean, the beard looks spectacular. But then other things are like, why is the sizes so off? Why is Donald Trump's neck so huge? I don't know. And I don't know why they're doing drawings anymore and not just taking a photo. I don't understand. Yeah. There's a lot of things in the machinations of the and Jim in the comments said he used to work in a prison, so maybe he knows. I don't know why the machinations are the way they are in all this stuff, that we still have like stenographers and courtroom sketch artists.
Open up the voice memo on their phone and like We can
and
get
then
this
turn
thing.
the
We don't
phone
need
and take a picture.
stenographers.
Yeah, literally, you could do it with a phone now.
Stenographer union is pretty strong though, so you got to
Actually is an app for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yesterday on the red hat blue hat conversation, I made the appeal that the question that the Trump campaign raises at this point is not, is this going to be Republicans versus Democrats? You can almost say that the party systems are on the side of democracy, even though all Republicans don't support it. What Donald Trump represents is authoritarianism. And we talk about this, Rob, I know in our training that we do with others, but you really see it now. And this picture that's on the screen now is of the other members of what the Georgia prosecutor calls the criminal enterprise, and 18 other people that are charged, in this criminal enterprise. And that's a whole other feature that's going on here. But there's still enough people who are just going to vote red. They're just going to vote for the R, no matter what. But then some people are really being pushed. So I will say to any of our listeners, if you're in conversations with Trump supporters and friends, ask them if they see it as authoritarianism. Yesterday in our conversation on Red Hat Blue Hat Talk, Casey said it's actually the Democrats who are the authoritarians and the ones who are stealing power and all the rest of this. So yes, you're going to get that from some folks. Just know that could possibly be coming. But I do think there's some movable people. And in my estimation, the last month has been really bad for Trump. No matter how much money was raised, no matter how many debates he skips, or how many candidates say they're still going to vote for him, he's in big trouble, and that's good for America. I think we two things I believe shouldn't happen. Former presidents shouldn't be incarcerated in jail cells, and criminal convicts shouldn't be elected president. Both of those things shouldn't happen. And I think we should have a world in which neither of those happen.
Well, hey, in our last few minutes, did we want to get to this Christian homeschooler who made parental rights a GOP rallying cry?
Yeah, that's the article in the Washington Post today with that headline. And it really highlights the fact that so many of the things that we see hanging around the edges of our politics, and especially of the approach of Christian nationalism in America, is really well coordinated. And the anti-school homeschooling movement, it's not all homeschoolers are anti-school, but the anti-school homeschooling movement that's often religiously based, and sometimes even the parochial anti-public school movements, are really about some well-coordinated big business efforts. And there's a great article that we just want people to notice and should pay attention to, where these Christian missionary homeschooling people are their larger story is being told. So, but I'm in New York, so I'm on that fast-paced New York minute, and I gotta go right now. So I don't know, you guys can keep talking, but I got New York kind of stuff to go get done, and I don't have time to be on a podcast anymore. I gotta go. So good talking to y'all. Dan, great to have you back.
Yeah,
good to see you, Rob.
Good to be back in the saddle.
Bye.
Rob, you want to keep talking? Or
No,
just
I'm
call
good.
it a day.
I mean, we say thank you to everybody who Carol and Jim and Kimberly and Barbara and Danimal 1965 and Joe, who came in calling
hot.
us losers
And
came in hot. Joe, listen, if you want to spend some time criticizing me, get in line. And
Rob got some lovely fan mail for some other work he's doing. Look, if you put yourself out in the public, someone is gonna lob some dumb comments on you.
Yeah, friendly fire coming your way. The Duck Daddy and Anil, and we had a whole bunch of folks who were jumping along. Peggy, who was jumping in and participating in the conversation with us today, and so thank you for that.
All right,
and we'll see you next week.
Bye.